Hello there, people of the internet. I have talked about this before, but I figured I'd go ahead and make a full-on dedicated video about it because, hey, why not? It's my YouTube channel and I like these old guns. So let's go ahead and talk about using military surplus firearms, things like this right here, in a defensive situation, an end-of-the-world situation, a situation where you have to use these to protect your life and liberty. I don't know what kind of situation you might find yourself in to where you have to use these to protect your life and liberty. Here in the United States, we have much better options, but are these right here still an option for you to be able to use? And I'm going to go ahead and give a little caveat. I'm going to say, yeah, you absolutely can use these, but no, I would definitely not recommend that because we have way better options out there. Especially since military surplus firearms are becoming a collectible and not just something that you can go out and get for dirt cheap. Nowadays, something like this bolt-action rifle, this particular case, this is an Oviedo Mauser, for around the same amount of money, you could get yourself a modern AR platform. And that modern AR platform is going to be dramatically more effective at defending life and liberty than this old school bolt action rifle. That being said, these old school military surplus rifles, for the amount of money that you're paying, you're getting an incredibly made rifle in comparison to how much that rifle would cost if you bought a brand new one of equal quality. So whenever I talk about using military surplus rifles, I'm not just going to go ahead and say absolutely not as a full-on blanket statement. There are military surplus rifles out there that would be better options than other military surplus rifles. Like, for example, I would definitely go with something automatic, like if you can manage to get your hands on an M1 Garand or Garand in 30-06, I'd recommend using that over some old school bolt action rifle like this right here. But if you choose to go with an old school bolt action rifle like this one right here, bear in mind that ammunition availability is probably going to be the most important thing to take into consideration. In this particular case, this Oviedo Mauser has been rechambered for 7.62 CETME, however it runs 7.62 NATO just fine. I have a lot of ammunition through this rifle, so I know it handles 7.62 NATO just fine. However, if you go with something like an old school Lee Enfield or an SMLE number 1 or number 4, you know, Jungle Carbine, pick your poison, something chambered in 303 British. 303 British is difficult to find nowadays, not as difficult as it was during all the panic buying and whatnot, but it's definitely more difficult than, say, 223-556. And although it is a more powerful round, it's not more powerful than, say, 7.62 NATO. However, it is substantially more expensive. You're going to be paying around $1.50 a round or so for 303 British ammunition, as opposed to surplus 7.62 NATO, which is going to run you more like 60 cents a round. Now, there's some arguments to be made with the cock on open, cock on close system, whatever it is that you prefer. And then there's the magazine capacity argument. The Enfield has a 10-round magazine as opposed to the 5-round magazine. I don't care what magazine capacity you pick. The 303 British is a rimmed cartridge, and they're difficult to feed via stripper clip into said magazine. However, the magazines are external, so you can go ahead and swap those out if you can afford to get yourself a bunch of Enfield magazines. But if you're doing that, you may as well get yourself more modern equipment if you're going to go and spend that kind of money. Like, getting yourself military surplus firearms, since they are significantly more money than they used to be, for a practical end-of-the-world situation, literally just does not make any sense nowadays, only because you can go out and get yourself modern equipment and with modern capabilities for the same amount of money, and you would be much more effective at defending life and liberty with that modern equipment as opposed to this old school military stuff. However, let's say you're in a situation where maybe you have grandpa's old hunting rifle and his old hunting rifle is some old Milsurp, and you don't have any modern stuff, you don't have the money to get modern stuff, and this right here is simply what you have. Pay attention to what it is, pay attention to the types of ammo it takes. A lot of these rifles here can't take certain kinds of ammo, like for example this Oviedo Mauser. It fires 7.62 NATO fine, but I would not recommend firing 308 ammunition through it because 308 burns at a higher pressure, and I have literally had an Oviedo Mauser explode on me firing 308 ammo and I would definitely not recommend that. But on the contrary, if you get yourself like a Mosin Nagant rifle or something chambered in 7.62 by 54 rimmed, that 7.62 by 54 rimmed is still very adequately available nowadays, and it's still roughly around 60 cents or so a round. It's a full power rifle round, much like all of the other Milsurps that would come from that time period. Ow. And that 7.62 by 54 rimmed, well, we do have some legality issues with importations of that stuff. However, I don't believe that it's going to completely disappear. So the Mosin series would be a good rifle to bring if you insisted on bringing a military surplus rifle. However, I would definitely recommend something in 7.62 NATO if you can manage to find that. If you're going to go with a Mauser rifle, if you find yourself like an old 8mm Mauser, then there is still surplus on the market that you can get for that. So you will be able to find ammo for that 8mm Mauser. And right now it's roughly 50 to 60 cents a round. Who knows what the future is going to show with this surplus ammunition. However, if you're going to go with Mauser, I recommend 8mm Mauser over 7mm Mauser, because there is no surplus 7mm Mauser on the market. And maybe there will be in the future, but right now there's not. I haven't really seen that in my lifetime, and I'm a quarter of a century old at this point. I think the 7 Mauser has definitely dried up, and you're pretty much just going to be paying for modern-made 7mm Mauser. And that is going to cost you a pretty penny. That is definitely going to be more expensive than buying surplus 7.62 NATO. And no matter the rifle that you decide to pick, go ahead and make sure that you know it functions, make sure you know how to use it, make sure you know how to maintain it. If you decide to use corrosive ammunition, which is a lot of the surplus stuff that's on the market, make sure you know how to properly clean your rifle so you don't rust out your bore, because if you rust out your bore, your rifle's going to be inaccurate, and then you're really up the creek without a paddle. But these old Milsurp rifles, a good number of them, parts and whatnot, are no longer being made for them. So if something breaks on them, you'll have to find yourself like a replacement part from another military surplus rifle, or like in the event that you're in an end of the world situation and you can't get resupplied, guess what? Now your rifle is down. However, if you have something that's modern manufactured, something that is common like the AR or the AK platform, which would be what most people are using here nowadays, the odds of you finding replacement parts are going to be dramatically better than the odds of you finding replacement parts for something like this Oviedo Mauser, this 93 Action Mauser. The likelihood of you finding replacement parts in an end-of-the-world situation for something like this is way, way less likely than you finding parts for your AR. At least that rifle there is chambered in 7.62 NATO, and that is definitely better than going into the end of the world with like a Moss 36 and 7.5 French, or a there's quite a few things out there that I would not recommend. The 303 British, just because you're not going to find ammunition in the event that you find ammo. If you find ammo, it's going to be 9mm 223 7.62 NATO, maybe 7.62 by 39, and probably 7.62 by 54 rimmed. Those are probably going to be the most common cartridges that you're going to come across. Very, very unlikely you're going to come across 303 or 6.5 Carcano or 6.5 Jap or 6.5 Swede or basically any of those 6.5 cartridges. You might come across some 6.5 Creedmoor, I suppose, but that's just because it's a modern hunting cartridge. There are AR-10s out there chambered in 6.5 Creedmoor, so hey, if you manage to come across some, by all means, go ahead and use that in your 6.5 Creedmoor, I suppose, but that's not exactly a military surplus rifle now, is it? The one good thing about these rifles is just how good the quality of rifle is. Like, there's a reason why these old school military surplus rifles have survived the past century and are still being used to this day and are still relatively accurate considering their age and are still relatively capable considering their age. They were definitely revolutionary for the time period that they came out in, but a lot of these military bolt-action rifles that we're using are from the late 1800s, and they're like a century and a half years old at this point, the design anyway. And we definitely have better modern stuff. I don't care how good you are with your 5-shot bolt-action rifle, somebody with a modern AR, even if they're just a moderate shooter or even a beginning shooter, they'd be able to absolutely run circles around anybody rocking a 5-shot bolt-action rifle, especially if that 5-shot bolt-action rifle has limited ammunition because there's no resupply. And I mean, hell, if you have a rifle that runs out of ammo, you're SOL. That rifle's become a paperweight and you can no longer do anything with it. So I definitely don't recommend using military surplus rifles for defense of life and liberty. Don't go into the end of the world with them. You can use them as like survivalist rifles. I've made videos based off of that before. You can use it for things that are non-combat situations. You could use it as a buddy rifle or a backup rifle if you just so happen to have one, but I would not recommend going out of your way to buy yourself an old school military surplus bolt action rifle for anything besides collectability purposes. I know of several people who have gone out and bought these old school bolt action rifles. Actually, I know a guy who bought a Mosin Nagant. He paid $450 for it, and that's about the price that these refurbished 9130s are going for. This one's in very decent shape, but he paid $450 for it. Like another $100 for all the accessories and whatnot, and I mean, in the end, he's got probably about $600 in this rifle after shipping and transfer fees and taxes and all of this stuff right there. And $600 for this old school Mosin Nagant bolt action rifle in 7.62x54 rimmed. 5-shot magazine, that $600 would get you a pretty decent entry-level AR platform. Or hell, you could spend the $500 on a bottom tier AR platform, and ammunition and magazines and sights and optics and a sling and all sorts of stuff, come out to that $600 mark and be standing on top with a much more capable rifle than you would spending the money on an old school, you know, damn near century old Mosin at this point. That would definitely not be my recommendation. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said before, I have talked about this, but I don't have an actual like dedicated video on this until just now. So I will see you guys on the next episode. Appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below. Link to all sorts of stuff. Go check that out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. I am going to go enjoy some air conditioning because it's hot out here. I'll see y'all later. Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garrett. It's a shame that bolt action shotguns aren't more mainstream.